Welcome to the Mind Money Spectrum podcast, where your hosts, Aaron Agti and Trishul Patel, go beyond traditional finance questions to help you explore how to use your money to achieve the freedom you want in life.
Hi, my name is Aaron Agti. I'm a financial advisor in the Bay Area, and I'm here with Trishul Patel, a wealth manager on the East Coast.
Hey, Aaron, great to be here today, and thanks everybody for watching and listening.
Great to be here as well. So in the past, we have talked about how I especially have incorporated some of George Kinder's life planning strategies when it comes to conversations with clients, specifically George Kinder's 3 questions. And so we'll include show notes, a link to that conversation about how those 3 questions help me learn about the values and priorities of my clients' lives, but especially helps them figure out for themselves. So the next, it's the only exercise. One of the things we kind of do as a follow-up is an exercise that's not introductory. It's not something with the outside relationship, but when we come back to maybe sometime later, maybe a year later, for other advisors might have different approaches, but the exercise is looking at an ideal day, week, and year. And the idea here is if you describe an ideal day and you get really specific, sometimes they'll actually have like a grid of writing out, okay, what time do you wake up? What do you do for each hour in that day? And what time do you go to sleep? And that's kind of an ideal day. And it is like, if you can build that day, you will probably be happier in your life. The more times you can do that specific day, in general, happier you will be. The problem is we can't do that. You don't want every day to be the same. And if one of your ideal days is including a vacation or travel, well, you don't want to be traveling every single day. That's no longer like a vacation. That's just how you live. And so that's why we separate out into ideal day, week, and year, because we're looking for, again, those things that you enjoy doing, but still having some variety, building in some kind of rhythm and seasonality, things to look forward to, things to anticipate. And we want to kind of go through this ourselves and use ourselves as examples and guinea pigs of how this exercise could work. And hopefully if you kind of think of that. So after, again, I encourage you to listen to the Kinder's 3 questions conversation first. But after that, if you want to kind of think about things that you can schedule that would make you happier. Because Trishul and I have talked about this of it's too easy to just let life happen, this kind of status quo. It's if you want to make sure that you do the things that you enjoy, you sometimes have to schedule in advance, and that both make sure that happens. And second, it creates that anticipatory feeling that there's good research that many people find looking forward to the vacation is sometimes more enjoyable than the actual vacation itself. And so you're trying to give yourself as many opportunities for that looking forward to something feeling that if you get plan in advance and you do it intentionally, you can probably do more often. So Trishul, is there anything you want to kind of add to that description of why this exercise works?
Good intro so far, Aaron, because we didn't actually talk specifically about what you were going to mention here, but as I was kind of prepping for this before we started this conversation, it was going through my mind about how that previous conversation with Kinder's 3 questions was very long-term oriented or more longer-term oriented or kind of strategic in nature, meaning trying to give some sort of understanding of the big picture. Whereas the discussion that we're trying to get into today is more shorter term, more tactical in nature. What do you actually do to prioritize the things that are important in your life so that you can evolve and build upon and actually make progress and, of course, enjoy yourself, right?
So that's a great point. That's actually a great reference, because there's a really good analogy in terms of time management. I think it might have been a Stephen Covey originally. You have this cup and you put the big rocks in first. Make sure you fit all your big rocks, and then you do the smaller rocks and the pebbles in the sand. And you can always, if you do it in that order, you can fit everything. And if you do it in any other order, if you do the sand first, which is like checking emails, that's going to fill up and you can't fit all the big rocks in.
Mm-hmm.
And what it relates to this conversation, Kinder's 3 questions is those big rocks when it comes to your life, like the huge priorities that you want to make sure to accomplish. Today's conversation is more like the next size down, in terms of like things that make you happy. So that's what we're trying to identify is some of those, like I like that idea of being more tactical of here are some specific things on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis that you enjoy that will kind of help you with your overall happiness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as we were talking about it, what also went through my mind is it's just this interesting notion of how just life and existence plays out, where you have to kind of, or it's helpful to find a balance between things that are roughly competing, meaning the Kinder's 3 questions, very strategic, very long term, very big rocks, and then you have these tactical concerns about, okay, what do you do on a given day, on a daily basis, so that things all align up with your vision of a successful life. And both of these are important to think about, and they can complement and build on each other. They don't necessarily have to conflict, and finding that union or that intersection where both can kind of coexist and lead to something that's better than the sum of the parts, in that jar analogy, fitting more than you would if you just focused on one versus the other allows you to hopefully have a more full jar.
Okay. So do I get us started? What would your ideal day include? It's like a regular Monday for you?
Yeah. So this is interesting from a few perspectives, because in the past, when I was very career oriented and doing the 9 to 5, certainly more than 9 to 5, but when I was in that zone, a large part of my time was dictated by the actual career itself, and then everything else kind of revolved around that nucleus. And there was a transition point when I left the career and I took the sabbatical and kind of did nothing, and realized that for the first time I had a blank page in front of me where I could define my day exactly how I wanted it to be. So that this was an exercise that I actually went through during that period. This was like 4 or 5 years ago, where I just started to think, okay, my day could be whatever I want it to be, but what do I want it to be so that I feel engaged, involved, productive, not too lazy, but energized enough to do things, and so on. And it started from a few simple things that I had carried from my previous career, but then many things did end up changing. So I say this because I've always had this notion of wanting to make small shifts in my life over time, not too drastic, and only making shifts when I felt like I was ready enough to actually commit to them. So one of the big changes I made, from being a college student to working, was I prioritized sleep. I made that a big priority throughout my entire professional career. Mm-hmm. So I had that down pretty well, meaning for my entire working career, I went to sleep at a reasonable, similar time and woke up at a similar time. In fact, I never used an alarm clock my whole working career, because I got to the point where, I just never needed to. I went to sleep at around the same time, and I automatically woke up, a few minutes before I needed to wake up for actually doing things, like getting ready and stuff like that.
All right. And I was like, do you think that's usual?
I think it's interesting. I think it could be typical in a different universe where we don't have all of the technology and we were cavemen and stuff like that, because the notion is we naturally feel sleepy when the sun goes down if we don't have all of these other things that are pulling us in different directions. So I think this is the usual base state, maybe, right?
Okay.
But it's probably not typical these days, for sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, I do think that because you were disciplined enough. So like that involves like every weekend as well. You kept the same time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I might fluctuate half an hour, an hour on the weekends, but really, the goal was keep it pretty steady and even keeled, meaning for me, it kind of start winding down around like 9:30, 10, lights out 10:30, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's
you got a
one of
really
the
good
bases of the pyramid that I pulled with me.
Okay.
Yeah. But then I kept that cadence. Right? I didn't need to get up in the morning anymore. Right. Once you kind of leave the 9 to 5.
Yeah.
So, but I kept it because I felt like it was something that did help me. I naturally felt tired at the end of the day, and I naturally felt energized in the morning, and I felt rested, given that I was getting enough sleep. But then I started to build in other things in my life that a little bit more neglected when you're in kind of career mode. I think one of them that we started early on with was, let's get out more, right? So we started taking daily walks and hikes and stuff like that. We had transitioned from living in a more residential urban setting to living in like the middle of the woods somewhere in like rural Florida. There are certainly rural parts if you go like central or west, and that's where we relocated to. So we got a thunderstorm coming through, so you might hear some of that. I don't know if you hear it yet, but this is afternoon Florida, typical for the fall. So building into that, we got in the hikes, and then I started building in more things like getting the nutrition and exercise better. We've talked about this in other episodes. So this kind of comes to a full circle where now my day is quite structured each day. They're pretty close to each other or some variation of a theme. And one thing I mentioned to you, Aaron, is that a big change between now and my previous working career is I look forward to Mondays. It's a big difference, right? And it's not just Mondays. I look forward to every day of the week. And but Mondays is not excluded from that notion. So to continue this, here's my Monday, right? Here's what my typical Monday looks like. I've made some notes. So I'm just going to kind of read up on it. I still get up around 6:30. There is one change that's actually happened over the last 6 months that I want to highlight because it is an interesting one. My phone charger started to act up and die, and it actually turned out the phone itself, the connection is messed up. It's very interesting. So I could easily replace the phone, but me being stubborn, I wanted to figure out what's going on here. Can I hack it? Can I do something? And I found some sort of happy solution where I can charge the phone if I leave it specially set up on the other side of the room and I don't go near it. Right.
Quick interjection. Have you tried a wireless charger?
My phone it's over 3 years old now, so it doesn't have that capability. It wasn't a flagship phone when I bought it. So maybe a new one would have it standard, but this one didn't. Okay, so that's not an option. It's still the old USB charger where you got to put in a wire. But here's the hitch. What it required me to do is actually unhinge the phone from my side pocket or myself when I'm in bed. Meaning now there's a distance between myself and the phone. And I feel like this has actually left room in my own life to be a little more free from that device. And it's actually opened up some more opportunities for actually sleeping better, right? That's one thing that's changed now that the phone isn't right next to my bed. It's on the other side of the room. And then also one thing that I used to do when I get up in the morning is immediately or within 30 seconds of waking up, my hand's on the phone to check like messages from overnight or something like that. And now, two things have changed since I made that shift in my life. One thing is that I've shifted away from getting up a little too early because sometimes I noticed that my mind would start getting a little too active around like 4:30, 5:30 a.m. And I think it was the device being in close proximity to myself. I think that was one change. So I do get up a little later now. I do get up closer to 6:30 than, around like 5:36. So, and I feel more rested. But also one thing I do is I wait a few minutes before I touch the phone. I think it's a little interesting. I don't know if you do the same, Aaron, but I found there is a difference between immediately reaching for the phone and giving your brain a little bit of time to accustom to being awake before doing that.
Okay, so I was taking down notes because I was like, I do want to address this with like some of my patterns. And I was going to wait till my ideal day, but this is actually a good conversation. There's a few things. One, I also know I have to like set an alarm on my phone to help me start getting ready for bed. Like if I set that alarm, it's like, okay, that's my reminder now. Okay, start winding down, trying to get in bed. I do have my phone next to me, and I'll be checking a few things. I might check my calendar tomorrow, set a reminder. I usually set an alarm 20 minutes before every meeting I have so that I can snooze it twice, and it'll go off again 2 minutes before that meeting. So it's usually a good cadence for me to make sure I'm on time. But so I'll have it next to me, but I do a really good job of setting my phone down. And I pick up my Kindle. I think it's a Kindle Paperwhite, and I have noticed that one, my wife can go to sleep while I'm still reading. And that reading in bed really helps me. In the past, it would have been a bedside lamp, but since I've gotten the Kindle, that's been kind of the only place I read books now because it's a different light than the phone, but I can usually do a good job like setting the phone down and ignoring it as I read to fall asleep. So that has been one thing for me at night. In the mornings, I do use my phone as my alarm, and I do snooze it both to make sure I'm getting my kids up and moving. So I do kind of need some kind of time structure to make sure that they're on, like they're doing every step of the morning routine before they go to school. And this is both like I need my phone, but I have things to do right away that don't actually check any message or anything on my phone. It's just the alarm function. A lot of times I will even like snooze my alarm, go wake up my kids, make sure that they are up and moving. I'll let them like lie back down, and I'll go back down, lie down for what'll be like 5 or 6 minutes. And then my alarm goes off again. Okay, time to get dressed. While they're getting dressed, I go brush my teeth. And like there's enough like morning routine stuff that I use the snooze function kind of a few times. Then my wife takes the kids to school. My oldest takes the bus, and I walk the dog. And this has worked really well. In the past, I would listen to a podcast while walking the dog, and I'd get back and I kind of feel like anxious, like just a little tense. And so now I have stopped listening to podcasts while I walk the dog in the morning. And I've noticed that like between getting the kids moving and walking the dog, it'll probably be an hour to an hour and a half before I get home. I feed the dog, and like, okay, now I'll look at my phone, see if there were any messages, emails, etc. And so it's semi-intentional, like it fits my routine enough, but I usually don't check my phone first thing in the morning. And Carl Richards had a thing of like, he would say no screens before a cold shower, or until you've had no screens before a cold shower. His thing, like he used to like wake up and go hiking, and so it is like after his hike he would then take a cold shower and then he can look at the screen. And I'm not going to quite get to that level, but it's a good oversimplification in terms of the message, and that has worked pretty well for me. Where again, it was not like I'm avoiding checking my phone, but it's like I have all these other things to do to make sure kids are going to school on time, and then I walk the dog, and then I am consciously not checking my phone while walking the dog. And I get home, I was like, okay. And that 25-minute walk in the morning with the dog has been incredibly peaceful. And I have really appreciated it. I can kind of tell the difference of the days that I do walk the dog versus I don't.
Right.
But yeah, I do a good job of, again, even though it's right next to me, not using the phone right before I sleep. I use the Kindles, and but like again, the light's different. I will fall asleep while reading, kind of thing. And then in the morning, not checking it right away, except for using the alarm function.
Yeah.
So I'm not as disciplined as you on sleep. If it gets the weekends, I can sleep another hour or two pretty easily. Maybe not two. I can sleep another hour pretty easily.
Right. So I do get like 7 to 8 hours, which is perfectly fine for me. And it's kind of been like that for as long as I can remember, 15, 20 years. So.
I get at least 7, but I love like 8.5. If I can get 8.5 hours sleep, my body loves that.
Right.
That's when I would be waking up on my own, kind of thing.
Yeah. So the one of the more recent pieces of the puzzle of my daily routine is getting a little more distance to the phone. But once I'm up around 6:30, 6:30 to 7, I will actually catch up on the phone, just check emails and look at my schedule for the day, make sure that I have some notion of my commitments that I already have lined up. 6:30 to 7:30 is just the whole dance of getting ready, getting my daughter ready for school and stuff like that. Mondays, I drop my daughter to school, so that takes about an hour one way. So 7:30 to 8:30 is dropping her off to school. And then 8:30, I head to the park. That's where I spend the day on Mondays. That's one of the reasons I like Mondays. That's my office, right? So there's Wi-Fi in the park, and I bring my laptop, and I try to get some work done there. But when I first get there around 8:30, I actually go for a hike or a walk. There's a lot of trails around there, so it's good in the morning to get that fresh air, and also it's not too hot and humid by that time. So yeah, I go for like a hike for like an hour and a half, something like that. And what that means is I actually start my workday around, call it, what did I write down? 10:30, right? 10:30 is when I, in earnest, have the laptop open and start, hitting the actual task list. And I do a good 90 minutes, really productive time where I'm getting stuff done, crossing things off, moving things forward as they should be. Take a break around noon, have a good hour break for lunch. And then at that point, I probably drive to the library, which is down the street. It's a little hot to be outdoors in the park in Florida in the summer. So I'll go to the library, and from 1 to 2:30, another hour and a half stretch. I typically save this hour and a half stretch because I'm only in the this type of routine for Mondays and Fridays where I might be at the library. I try to do the stuff that I've really been holding off on doing, and I find this is the time where I actually do get them done because I'm in the library. You can't really talk. There's less distractions.
Yeah.
And the stuff I've been really holding off on, I really like to plow through. I'm like, oh, I got to do my taxes, or I got to do this, this really mundane task, stuff like that. But the good news is it works. I actually do get it done in this hour and a half stretch for the week. And I get to cross off some things that have really been, on my top of my list, but I've been holding off on, sort of.
Okay.
So 2:30 is when I kind of wrap up my workday. What that means is from 2:30 to 3:30, I get to do other things. And what it might be is like running errands or doing some other activity, like, maybe taking another walk or a stroll, or taking care of some other non-business related things that I might want to handle, or just, goofing off on learning something new on YouTube, something like that. Right.
Okay.
And 3:30, pick up my daughter. Takes an hour to get home. We're 4:30 now. Now it's evening time, right? So the day's almost over, but spend some quality time having dinner, stuff like that. And where are we right now? So, 4:30 to 6:30 is kind of family time. 6:30 to 7:30 is the whole dance of getting ready, getting my daughter ready for bed, reading her books, letting her do her reading time by herself and lights out for herself at 7:30. So Monday, 7:30 to 8 is just doing some household chores, just some light work around the house, making sure things are tidy, putting away dishes, putting away clothes, stuff like that. 8 to 9 is when I meet with my trainer. So we'll exercise. I'll exercise for an hour. This is over Zoom, so I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
It's just hitting the weights or doing some cardio or yoga, whatever it happens to be. And then now we're at 9 p.m. So then 9 to 10, I might watch a movie with my wife or play video games, whatever that happens to be. And then 10 to 10:30 is, like my downtime where I try to distance myself from some of the technology and, try to do some more boring type of activities, Kindle or read a book or, just listen to something that's not too exciting and not too invigorating. And then 10:30 kind of sleep. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's my, it's pretty close to what I would have identified as my ideal day when I started this whole roadmap process, like 5 years ago. So and most other weekdays are some variation of that theme.
Okay. When I think of this exercise, there are days that, like, I can describe a work day that sounds similar in certain respects. I don't like exercising, but I love playing sports. So if I can get some kind of sports in as my form of exercise, that's great. This morning I was actually able to play pickleball for like an hour and a half, or
nice.
That's like 8:30 to 10 kind of thing. And so one of my friends, he was able to join me for that. Great workout for me. Lost every game, had a ton of fun.
Awesome.
But that's still like that. I walked the dog and I went to play pickleball. But like that's still like I don't do the hike. I will do some kind of sports. That's part of my ideal day. I don't get to often enough. And so if I can like force myself to get on the Stairmaster and watch a TV show, I'll do that as my exercise at that time. But I try to have like before 10 a.m. is some kind of exercise. Actually, for the last couple of years, but last year I had a knee surgery. This year I broke my elbow, so it's like a lot of physical therapy and a lot of stretches. So I've been trying to fit that like 8:30 to 10 is health time kind of thing.
Right.
Then again, I try not to have my first client meeting before 10:30. So it's usually I have a client meeting about 10:30. And either that first half hour, I'm getting other work done and kind of getting ready for that meeting. Then after that meeting, I'll be taking meeting notes and probably have a good normal days, like an hour and a half until I have like a second meeting in the afternoon. But my ideal day would include lunch, like going out to lunch, sometimes with Jessica, my wife, other times with a friend, but getting out of the house away from my home office to go have lunch as well, sitting down. That's always part of one of those ideal days. I can't think about it. The reason I wanted to kind of just lump it all together is like, again, I can't do that every day. So there's things in my mind where I can't go play softball and see a movie on the same day.
Right.
But those will both be evening things that I'll do on a couple days of the week. But so when it comes to my ideal day, it kind of doesn't matter which one. It's so like, again, I have lunch, I come back, I have some more work, kids get home. I pick up kids on Tuesday afternoons. My wife and father-in-law take care of the other 4 days. So I usually can get some work done until about 3:30 or 4. Then I usually walk the dog. Ideally, I walk the dog with my wife. We get a good like 50 to 60 minute walk because it's just the two of us talking for that time. During sports season, though, that time will be me coaching one of my kids. So it's usually my wife will walk the dog while I'm coaching kids. So that's, again, being outside with family. Again, not every day is going to be the same, but like that block is usually similar. Then we'll have after practice and or after walking the dog, again, like family dinner. My wife and I, we don't like to cook at all. And we found that usually kids don't need a full meal. Especially if they've had lunch. So like their grandfather takes them out to lunch a decent amount. So it's sometimes just kind of eating fruit or something. On the weekends, we're more likely to figure something out. But we'll use that time. We'll usually sit down and watch a show as a family. It was Gravity Falls we loved. Milo Murphy's Law we loved. Now we're trying Big Hero 6, the series. So these are kind of fun things that both Jessica and I truly enjoy. It's not just kind of watching a kids show along with them. It's like, no, we actually really enjoy these, as do our kids as well.
Yeah.
And then bedtime routine goes from about 7 to 8. We let we'll try to read with them or make sure that they're reading for themselves because they're a little older now. And then we'll let them have reading lights until about 8:30 or 9. And after they go to bed, most nights I've been playing Zelda. For a long time I was playing Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now I'm playing the sequel.
That's interesting because that's my current 8:30 to 9:30 or 9 to 10 routine right now.
Tears of the Kingdom?
No, the first one.
Okay.
Breath of the Wild, yeah.
I absolutely love that game. I even after I beat it a couple times, I was still like, okay, now I got to do all the side quests.
Oh boy! So you got 100% on the first one.
So it is about that stage I started looking things up. I had to, like, there were 2 quests where I had already found the shrine. I just have to find the person to talk to. And as I looked that up, I realized to get the 100%, you have to find every Korok.
Yeah.
And there's something like 900.
Yeah.
And I found 500. So I found every shrine, every side quest, and maxed out every Korok, every stash. So, like, you know what? I think that's enough.
Right. Yeah.
But my friend who actually gave us his old Wii U that included the game. He had already done the downloadable content, so that included enough extra stuff as well. But yeah, I probably spent 2 years ish just playing that one game.
Wow. Yeah. I remember when we last spoke about it. I think I had tried it for a bit and I just didn't realize I don't have the commitment right now for something like this. And it sat there for about a good year. And I only picked it up like a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like when I think of like the sequel right now, it's like, cool. I have my evenings planned for like the next 2 years.
It did go through my mind. Is this the greatest investment of entertainment out there?
Oh, like the dollars to hours kind of ratio is incredible.
Right. For like the cost of 2 movies or one night out or one dinner, right? One meal.
Yeah.
You get literally 2 years of entertainment.
Yep, exactly. So, but yes, that's usually my regular day. I'll add in like on a weekly basis. This not be my ideal week specifically. I had a different idea for that. But it would include like one night I'm gonna go play softball. It's kind of instead of putting kids to bed. Or if it's not softball season, I'll go see a movie. And so like one night a week, from about 5 to 8 p.m., I'm out of the house, sometimes by myself, sometimes seeing a friend. And it's just once a week. My wife also takes it kind of, we call it a night off. Like, doesn't have to put the kids to bed. And that is really important to our weekly rhythm. So it's closer to my ideal day, but like my ideal week from this like regular routine perspective includes that night off. And that has been really nice, where sometimes I'll walk the dog, sometimes I won't, or I'll walk with her. But sometimes like I'll even leave the house early and I will go sometimes doing errands, sometimes like looking for gifts for my wife, which has like anniversary, birthday, Christmas, but it's a good time by myself where no one's asking me questions. Like my wife and I have talked like that. The feeling of just like 3 kids asking questions all the time, and they're not, most of the time they're not inappropriate questions. It's not like they're trying to be mean or pestering us. It's like, hey, what time do I have to be at school tomorrow? Okay, because they don't get emails from the school that tells them, because the first day of school was yesterday, so that's like just on top of my mind. What periods do I have? Who's my teacher? What do I need to wear? Do I need shoes or can I for PE, or can I wear boots? Do I need, what's the weather like? Do I need a jacket? Do I need short sleeves or long sleeves? Okay, so do you know where my water bottle is? Do I need to bring a water bottle? Who's picking me up? Is Wednesday, so is Cooper picking me up? Are we going to lunch? Well, it's just these nonstop questions are so draining to us.
Let's also be clear. You have multiple kids,
Yes.
and it's more than 2 as well.
And like there have been times the older one is getting self-sufficient enough that, and kind of socially aware enough that she doesn't interrupt to ask questions as much. Right. But she is starting to like act like a teenager. So, but there were stretches, especially when she was just a few years younger, where you're getting like 3 questions at a time. Like someone asks a question, before I can answer that, the second kid has asked a question, and like while I'm talking to the first kid who asked a question, the third kid's asking their question, and it's just like so mentally draining that anytime we can be away from that,
right?
Okay. So, you know what? I'll actually use this to kind of transition to my ideal week. And then I'll let you do yours. The ideal week is almost always a week off with my wife. What kind of, we love traveling to a city and walking around, seeing a ton of stuff. Well, she gets motion sick, so she can handle plane flights okay. A lot of times she gets sick once we land. But we try to kind of avoid buses, subways, and even kind of Uber, Lyft rides if we can. Like, so we'll walk as much as we can. So we spent a week in Boston a few weeks back, where my parents took the kids camping. So we just picked, looking for a city to go walk around in. Last fall is Chicago. But just that feeling of, one, we don't like having to set our alarms, so we'll kind of sleep in. We have no rush in the morning, no have to get up and do this. Because we're on the East Coast, in those particular trips, our body had trouble adjusting. So like our body getting up at 8 a.m. Pacific time is 11 a.m. Eastern time. Worked the same way when we went to Hawaii, where our body getting up at 8 a.m. Pacific time is like 5 a.m. Hawaii time.
Yeah.
So we had to like try to sleep until 6 a.m. Hawaii time. But like you said about the sleep, like once we got tired at the end of the night, we weren't staying up really late on Hawaii time. So we were the first ones at the pool. Like we would walk to a Starbucks hotel over and sit there for like an hour. Like that was our morning walk, sit there for an hour. That's an hour kind of checking messages, checking news. I'll do crosswords on my phone. We go back and we're still the first ones at the pool to sit and read. But the ideal weeks have always been like that. It's my wife and I together, away from kids, no specific times. We plan things, so we do have some structure. Like, okay, we're going to do this walking tour of Boston at this time. It's like, okay, we got it. But it's like, it's an easy time. We're like, okay, we have some time to get breakfast. We're in no rush. That feeling of not being in a rush. And like, again, the kids aren't there asking questions. So it's incredibly mentally relaxing for us. Yeah. That not being in a rush, not having too much time constraint, just a little bit of structure, a lot of walking. We love just talking to each other, walking tours of cities. We did this in Paris, London, Chicago. We didn't do one in New York. We did one in DC, Hawaii, Chicago. We said Chicago, and then Boston. Like whatever almost doesn't matter where the city is. We just love walking around a city. And that's almost always our ideal week. Sometimes like 4 or 5 days long, like long weekends still works just as well.
Mm-hmm.
If we're there with friends, we might try and do an escape room, but that feeling of no one's asking us questions and we're in no rush.
Right.
Is the time, like it takes us, we only get to have that feeling a few times a year.
Yeah.
So that's what my ideal week usually includes.
So, is it the feeling rushed part that makes your typical week not close to that ideal week?
Yeah, it's not even feeling rushed. It's, if you look at our family calendar, like we have a family Google calendar that each kid has their own color.
Yeah.
It's just always like almost like to the 15 minutes of like, okay, yesterday, because it's the first day of school, I had to drive my older daughter to her school, and today she took the bus while my wife took the younger two. And I have to come home, walk the dog, and I was trying to meet up for pickleball. The courts were closed. But like today, it's making sure that my oldest daughter has an orthodontist appointment. So grandpa is going to pick up the younger two at an early time, then pick up the oldest one, and then get to the orthodontist. Then he'll drop them off, and I'll probably take them to figure out dinner because it's Wednesday. So Jessica's not going to go.
Right.
Is not going to be here. There's always like, okay, between getting them ready for school. Okay, who has like homework assignments? Do you have your Chromebook with the charger that the school provided? Do you have your water bottle? Okay, after school, who has practice where? Okay, so I need to go here. You need to go there. Okay, those two older daughters, can we leave Maverick by himself for a little bit? Well, if he's playing Zelda, he'll probably just sit on the couch and like won't hurt, like stay out of trouble. So yeah, that's where it's like, and it's just this like continuous, like so many overlapping things on our calendar.
Yeah.
That a lot of times, like when we walk the dog together, it's like a one-on-one. It's just like, okay, here's what I'm taking care of tomorrow. What are you taking care of tomorrow? Okay, I need to make this adjustment. Can you do this? So like today we're having an ant problem. So my wife had scheduled someone to come take care of the ants, but the checkbook was on my desk. So she's like, it's just so much of that organization and logistics that's just mentally draining every single day for us.
I can understand. It sounds like there's just a lot of tax on your time throughout a given day.
I think we've done an okay job of making sure that we're not overcommitted in terms of time.
Yeah.
It really feels like it's just the mental load.
Yeah.
It's just, okay, when was the last time our kids went to the dentist? When was the last time they had their annual checkups? One daughter has braces, so she has to go see the orthodontist every month. Making sure we're staying on top of medication for our youngest. Okay, our oldest had softball evaluations this past Saturday, and probably be on a team soon. She's gonna ride her bike to school with kids tomorrow. Or wait, no, she's not, because it's Wednesday and grandpa picks her up from school on Wednesday. So she can't have a bike at school. Like it's just the mental load of organizing 5 calendars. It's 2 people doing 5 calendars kind of thing.
Right. And I think it just highlights it's not easy to to pull all that off. You got to have a lot of things working in unison.
For a lot of my clients are similar kind of life stage, that like both couples, both parties work and they have kids, and so a lot of our meetings are becoming working meetings. Like, hey, last time you said you make this change in your 401k, did you? Nope, no problem. We're gonna have you log in your 401k. We're gonna do this right now.
Yeah.
Okay, last time we said we're gonna make sure that our savings account is now getting at least 4% because interest rates go up. Nope. Okay, let's log into your bank. Let's open a new CD for the next 6 months. It's like a lot of our meetings become working meetings because the time that they have blocked off to meet with me is the time they have to get these things done.
I don't want to deviate too much, but is this a symptom of our culture, or is this just how it is?
That's a really good question. My wife and I talk about this a lot. My guess is that it's a symptom of where we live, and I guess my clients would be similar from that perspective. It's the Bay Area is expensive. It's hard for a single income household to afford a house. So there's a lot of dual income households. Most of the, especially the small city we live in, has a large college educated population. But even the Bay Area and Silicon Valley and tech, and a lot of urban areas tend to have higher college educated populations than rural areas. So there's a not quite competitive, but like an expectation. If all the kids are going to college, then they're all trying harder in school to be good at something. And so they are signed up for several things. And so we actually try to make sure that our kids aren't signed up for too much, but they're still going to be signed up for one or two things at a time.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit of societal, but it's also, I do think that where we live plays a factor in that. I think it'd be similar in most major urban areas as well, even though like we're in a suburb of San Francisco. But there's a little bit of that. Yeah, if it's a dual income household, it's kind of, why is it dual income, kind of cost of living, but also just expectations. I think it's a little bit of like talking about like traditional gender norms kind of thing. Like it was easy for men to go to work because they would make a lot more than their wives 50 years ago. Now they're both making about the same. A decent number of the wife is making more. It might actually be more. Most of my clients, the wife makes more. And so it kind of doesn't make as much easy sense for one to completely stop unless they're intentionally planning for that. That has to be kind of, okay, we have to make sure that our lifestyle fits in under one of our incomes. And for some, it will be the husband who stays at home. For others, it'll be the wife. But kind of the decision-making process is very similar either way. And so it's just, once you get to like dual income household, paying for daycare, and trying not to let things fall through the cracks, and like making sure that your kids are still thriving, just kind of creates this, I don't want to call it pressure, but it's just like these expectations. Like parents have expectation of the kids, and therefore if the entire school, all the parents are expecting their kids to go to college, and like, okay, what does that message send to all the kids? And now they're also kind of competing and trying different things with each other.
Yeah. And we mentioned this in previous conversations. Just, it's a lot harder these days to check all the boxes on a single income household, just because cost of living is higher, houses are more expensive, education is more, healthcare is more, and it probably takes two incomes to meet that same lifestyle of a single income from a generation ago. And on top of that, it's still all of these added things, more check boxes of activities and just other things that just really saturate the day or week.
You start to get into, okay, we need daycare. So now who's going to pick up and drop off from daycare becomes important. Once you get one kid in daycare, one kid in school, okay, now we have two pickups, two drop-offs.
Yeah.
Then, okay, well, we don't have 3 months off in the summer from work, so we have to do camps. So even in the summer, it's doing camps. And like, do you force all three kids to do the same camp? Sometimes we have. Other times it's, okay, we're letting the older kid do the camp that the younger kid just isn't old enough for. Like the camp will have an age limit. And so there was one stretch where all 3 kids were in different camps.
Yeah.
And it's like, that was definitely good for them. The oldest one was doing like a French pastry baking camp. The middle one was doing a sewing camp. She's made a couple dresses for herself. And the other one was doing like an art and science kind of camp. Like all 3 kids loved it. But it was 3 drop-offs, 3 pickups. And my wife did most of that because she was laid off. But like, again, last summer and next summer, we'll have to figure that out. That's just hard logistics.
Yeah. I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is, when we talked about our ideal day, it seemed like there was a good amount of overlap. But now that we're on the ideal week, it seems like there's this divergence, and I can see why. I didn't mention my ideal week yet, but as I'll go into it, you'll kind of see it's a lot closer to my ideal day, meaning it's a different variation of my day.
So yeah, it's that's what I say. In my ideal day, kind of, it's the kids go to school, I guess I'd say.
Yeah.
And I love them so much, but it's hard. And my ideal, like, it is hard for me to get work done when they're at home.
Yeah.
In part because I could close my office door and exclude them, but I want to go play catch with them. I actually want to do things with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so my ideal day does include them going to school.
Yeah. So another thing that was going through my mind is I've been thinking about the ideal day and evolving it over time. And I came across this. I was listening to Andrew Huberman. Have you heard of him? He's a neuroscientist, but he has a podcast on like well-being and health and stuff like that.
I don't think so. I might maybe, but.
Okay, so he had a snippet of, here are the 5, based on his research and talking to people and just all the stuff he's been looking into. I think he's in Stanford, so he's a West Coast professor or researcher. But anyway, so based upon what he's found is he came to realize there are about 5 things that every human should be doing every day to just be able to do all the other things. Meaning if you're not filling up these 5 buckets every single day, it's going to be really hard to do the other things. And the reason is these are pretty essential, meaning for humans in general, we're in a position where we have to shift mindsets, meaning we have to go from being in a work mode to being in an eating mode to going to handling a kid mode to a client mode and so on. And to make these shifts, it's very taxing. And if you're deficient in some of these areas, it's just hard to do. It's hard to make these types of changes. And it's hard to do all the other things that are demanding of a human life, right? So let me just name the 5. And they might be even quite obvious at this point. But, big one, first one, sleep, right? It's quite important. You want to get that hammered down if you want any hope for even being able to think straight. And then, of course, health in terms of nutrition and water intake, right? You want to make sure you get that balanced out so that you have the right nutrients going into your body and the energy to do what you need to do. Third one would probably be some notion of exercise and moving around, right? Just not being so sedentary. And then
go on. I was curious, why they distinguish health from exercise, but
nutrition is what I meant by health.
I see. Okay.
Water and food, right? To simplify that. So exercise, right? Next one, moving around, maybe like an hour a day, something like that, walking at least, or having some sort of strength training or cardio. The next 2 are a little less obvious, but they're quite critical on a daily basis, and they're getting some exposure to some sort of sun early in the day, sunlight, right?
Okay.
And the last one is some notion of social engagement, every single day, some notion of that. So those are like 5 things. And what he tries to say is
as well.
Yeah,
I had not thought about that, but that makes sense.
Yeah. So his notion, which is backed by some sort of empiricism. I'll leave a clip or a video where he talks about this stuff. But the idea is you could probably go like a day or 2, like skipping on some of these. Mm-hmm. But if you are deficient chronically, it's going to be very hard to do any of the other things that are important for being a human if these five aren't met. And really, if you want to be able to do all these other things, you want to get these five in place, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just interesting enough, it sounds like your ideal day does cover these five, based upon what you said. And for myself, I do think now it's at the point where I am covering these five, but I do remember when I was more in that career focus mode, it was very hard to get those five checked off, like, hey, kudos to you, right? You've done it in this hectic, really jam-packed lifestyle. But also, I think it might be helpful that you have done these five that has allowed you to even do or balance all these other competing concerns in your life for your time. So, I think for myself, it was a struggle when I was in the career zone to even get these five. And I notice a difference now that I have. But I'd say a stark difference is I think the amount of competing things that I'm dealing with, frankly, it does sound like it's less than what you have on your plate, just based upon all the things you mentioned. And it of course, there's a difference, right? One kid versus three, and then, different cost of living, lifestyle.
Age of kids also matters. Like it was, I don't want to say it was easier, but it was definitely different. Like it was, when they're younger, especially like under 5, it does feel like they are harder in the moment, but a little easier logistically.
Mm-hmm.
It's if you're working, like drop off daycare, pick up from daycare. It's like, and then trying to get them to eat a healthy, like eat the vegetables. It's like, that's the hard part. Now I can just tell them, no, you have to eat your vegetables, and they will.
Yeah.
But that's like after one has softball, the other has football, and the third one wants to know if he can go on his iPad for like asking, like, even though I said no yesterday, today's a new day, so maybe he'll say yes this time. Like, so it becomes it's different based on different ages of kids.
Yeah. Well, see, but part of me was even thinking, well, they used to have more kids a generation ago, but then again, after school, I think kids just ran around the neighborhood, right? Until the cowbell rings and they come home for dinner, and that's kind of it.
Well, going back far enough, the older kids start to help raise the younger kids.
That too, yeah. Or they're working on the farm, or building Model Ts, or whatever productivity you can get out of them.
That idea of they're just out playing till the bell rings, that is one thing that we have. My wife and I have talked about. It's not just us, but it does feel lacking, where the play needs to be structured, and or supervised. And
clarify that, needs to be, or you guys prefer it to be, or
no. It does feel like, from a societal pressure perspective.
Okay.
Like, you'll read stories online, like kids going to the playground to play, and police asking, "Where's the parent?" And like, I sent my 8-year-old to the playground.
Yeah, right.
And it's like, is that acceptable? And even if they send them to the playgrounds, like, okay, do they do that with a friend? Scheduling a play date with a friend, because the friend that they make from school lives 2 miles away, so they can't walk to their friend's house. Like, okay, do we arrange with the parents for a pickup or drop off of one kid to that? Like, it also doesn't matter which house they go to, but again, it's the mental load aspect. And so now my oldest is capable of kind of planning her own play dates and scheduling and like coordinating to go see her friends. And so she almost has more freedom, not because of like she needs us to drive, but just because she arranged, like, hey, my friend who lives half a mile away, I can ride my bike and see her at this time. Can I go? Like, yes. You figured it all out. So I'm happy to let you go. But the younger two, it's like, hey, can I go to Raya's? Like, I don't know if Raya's home. Like, I have to like coordinate with Raya's parents, and like even yesterday or Monday, my middle daughter's friend parents email like, hey, do they want to go play in the pool because school started on Tuesday? And we're like, well, she's actually in San Francisco with grandpa on Mondays, so when she gets home we can text, because we don't know what time they're going to see if you still want to play. So, okay, yes, Hazel gets home. Do you want to go play with your friend in the pool? Yes. Okay, school's tomorrow, start a bedtime routine. Can we come pick up Hazel at 7? Like, oh, they're still in the pool. Can you come pick them up at 7:30? Like, just getting our kids to play with friends is mentally taxing.
Yeah.
And this is not including organized sports and other organized activities.
Right.
So I remember even like when I was a kid, I would be able to like leave the house, go knock on my friend's door, they weren't home.
Yeah.
Okay, and go ride my bike around the neighborhood, or
Yeah.
we're near a boys and girls club. Sometimes I go with my brother, sometimes I went by myself.
Yeah.
And I don't know if my guess would be that still exists in more rural areas. So I wonder like how much of it is like urban versus suburban versus rural. But that takes up a lot of our mental energy each week.
Yeah. It's interesting. So when I was growing up, ages like 0 to like 4, we lived in like a townhouse community, and literally the notion was all the kids are just playing around in the courtyard outside, right? Because there's just townhouses very close together. And then we moved to a more suburban area where the houses are more spread out, and now it's tough. Like you gotta, it's hilly, and you gotta take a car to go anywhere basically. And you might not even know your first neighbor, your second neighbor, your third. The closest person you may know is a half a mile in any direction. So there was a period where, from like ages 4 to like 10 or 11, you're kind of stuck in that zone that I think you're talking about. Things that change, when I was like 11, then, okay, now you can ride your bike and make it to the park and then hope somebody shows up that you can play with, or at least you can get to their house eventually and knock on the door. So I think that did change, but there was a period where that wasn't quite possible.
No, you're right. Because as I think about it, because my dad was in the Navy, we moved around a ton. So it's like, I like the period that I just described of leaving my house and go knock on the door would have been like 5th or 6th grade, when I've been 11 or 12. And so when we were younger, there was one weird time on Navy housing. So all the people on the block were in the Navy and they all had kids. So that one worked out well. And I would have been like 5 to 8. Another time when I was 8 or 9, we lived in an apartment complex, same thing. There's so many people really close. And this was in San Diego. So it's like outdoor apartments, not in a building. So like you're so kind of like that townhome feeling, but everyone had their own external door. So I could walk up to their door and say hello. But like, I played with a bunch of people in the apartment complex parking lot. We played roller hockey, and there was enough kids that we could get what felt like a 10-on-10 game of like really varying abilities.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, once we were in more, it's like by 8, once you're in the suburban area, like my age was old enough that I could ride my bike, but I had to like ask my sister, because she's 6 years younger, like, did she have fewer friends because we were in a single family house in a suburban area when she would have been 6?
Right. Yeah. So it's even giving us pause right now, because right now we're in like the starter home where we purchased before my daughter was even born. But we liked it because there's this community aspect. It's not townhomes, they're single families, but they're all in this development where it's gated, and the kids can literally run outside. You see them every night playing till like 10 o'clock, right? And we're like, if we move, our kid's not going to have this opportunity, just when she's going to be old enough to not have to be in bed by, like 6 p.m. every night or 7 p.m. every night indoors for dinner. So it's one of those things where I think we might stay just for that, letting her have that opportunity to just play around with her neighbors in close proximity.
So I think we haven't even gotten to ideal year yet. So I think let's try and push that off for next time. I'm not even sure we got to your ideal week.
Yeah, I think we have some things to pick up on, so we could certainly do that.
Okay, so we'll pause our conversation here. We'll make it a part 1, and next time we'll start off with you going more in depth on your ideal week, and then we'll share kind of our ideal years.
Okay, fair enough.
This is a good conversation on lifestyle logistics in society.
Sure.
That's not the intent of the conversation.
Yeah, I think it's important to touch upon these things. One point I was going to make, and maybe this can be one of our final thoughts, but it's tough to balance all this stuff. Life has gotten easy from many perspectives, but it's really hard. There's a lot of competing concerns on our time.
I think that's the point of the exercise, is that you have to be intentional. And those 5 things that you talked about, it is so easy to not get outside. I ran some errands, but I was in the car and I left the house, but I didn't really get any sun. It is so easy. Didn't get to exercising today. Or I made sure to exercise and I'm having McDonald's for dinner. And it's like you talk about the nutrition kind of thing. It's like those 5 as a baseline really are hard. If to do that every day. Right. Yeah. Because again, you and I, we started our businesses. So we're not working 9 to 5. We're starting at 10:30. That's the only way we can get 1 or 2 of those things is to work fewer hours. And that's not realistic for most people.
Yeah. I mean, I'm hoping we'll get to a little more positive place, but honestly, I'm feeling like, oh boy, this is not easy. This is really not easy, but I feel like it's important. So I think the conversation is valuable. Beyond that, the fact that it may be tough, but I feel like it deserves the priority that certainly we're giving in this episode, but even more.
I agree. And I had not thought of it from that perspective of my ideal day includes those things, but being kind of conscious and self-aware of how do different activities make you feel, allow you to make these adjustments. And I have told the story of walking the dog in the morning without a podcast. That was a transition I made, and I can feel a difference. And that's I don't know how I would decide to that, to prioritize mental well-being during the walking the dog. Sure, that's a perfect time to walk. I in the afternoon, if I walk the dog by myself, I love listening to a podcast and I feel great listening to a podcast in the afternoon, but not the morning. It's
Well, good stuff. I think we have plenty to pick up upon when we come back to this. So thanks, Aaron. I enjoyed the conversation.
I did as well. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so thanks everybody for also listening. If you're enjoying this stuff, do subscribe, share, and pass the word along. So thanks everybody. Bye.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money Spectrum podcast. Be sure to visit mindmoneyspectrum.com to access the entire library of episodes. Remember, it's not black and white, but the wide spectrum of gray area where you get to pursue the freedoms you want in life. Opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and has no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Have a nice day.